Welcome again to the Sudbury Historical Society's first program of the 2011-12 year with our Ancestors Day. And we want to thank also the town administration for providing the building for our museum and our meetings. We're very grateful to them. And I want to tell you that we have loads and loads of town reports dating back to the 1800s. And after the program, you can go through them and take whatever you want, $1 a piece. And some of them are so interesting. I'm sure you'll like to bring some of them home, especially the little ones, you know. And also, after the end of the program, if you didn't get a chance to sign up for membership, you can stop by that table again. And even if you can't join right now, give us your email address if you have one so that we can keep you informed about our programs. And I encourage you all to join because it's such a simple way to help the society. And people have said that, well, I can't come every time. But being a member says that you are helping us whether you're here or not, and it's quite, you know, expensive to preserve and preserve history, educate, and also produce these programs. Everything involves money these days, as we all know. So now I'll turn the program over to Lee, and we'll have our Peter Noyes Ancestor Day.
Thank you, Mary. This program is coming from what I'm going to be talking about from the Pulitzer Prize-winning book, 1964, by Sumner Chilton Powell, called Puritan Village. So I'll be quoting Sumner Chilton Powell's words, where he had the good fortune of going back to England in the early 60s and researching where all these families came from. And that book is still the Bible of the founding of Sudbury. And it really starts, it's in the script here, but this is the best image of the confidence I have ever found. I found it by accident in York, Maine. And whether you know it or not, a lot of people went from this town and settled York, Maine. Yet it's only 1964, but it shows a Dutch pinnace, everything is accurate, including the flag that they would have flown at that time. But it is one of the biggest mysteries as to how those people got here on the Confidence and what happened to the Confidence. But we have, starting here, a little song by Paul Weiss, which Paul Weiss played the part of Peter Noyes in the Town Meeting Tonight play in 1989. And you're going to sit him back?
Yeah. Now, some of you that are in the audience tonight, this afternoon, may have even been part of the cast or choruses or whatever, and so you are welcome to join in and sing along. Now, we don't have the music, but we do have the words, and the words reflect some of the things that the colonists were going through in the very earliest days of Sudbury, and coming in to recognize that this was indeed wonderful land. And Debbie Keeney is going to be humming along with me, so get your humming things going, and let's see what it sounds like. Lush green meadows by the riverside, such fine land to show your pride, bride. Nature's riches here reside. Grass and timber straight and tall, let's get to work and fell them all. Must have new homes built by fall. Good land, good Good land, good land, good land. Fish and game to dry and store, pick and mill our fields of corn, wood for winter stacked in cords. Good land, good land, good land, good land. Spread the word to those who dare, tame the wild and claim your share. Bring strength and courage forth to bear. A land here beckons full and fair. Good land, good land, good land, good land. Feed the livestock, bale the hay, spin the flax and shape the clay, walls to build and roads to pave. Good land, good land, good land, good land, good land, good land.
He will be back. So from the words of Puritan Village, Chapter 1, as I told Amy, who is going to be doing part of this program, she's never read the book, right? Did you know of its existence? That Peter Noyes is the star? Okay. You do now. The Web of Open Field Life. On the 26th of March, 1638, Peter Noyes, yeoman of the parish of Weyhill, Hampshire, gave his land back to the lord of the manor. No longer would he help his Hampshire neighbors erect the fences around the common fields in the spring, or watch the plow teams turn furrows in the rich loam. Noyes had decided he was taking his eldest son to visit New England in the expectation of moving his family from Weyhill forever. As he stood before his fellow tenants in the courtroom of Ramridge Hall, Peter Noyes felt a touch of sadness. His fields were just waiting for care. There was a season when the winter-sown wheat was starting to sprout, the time for spring sowing. Doubtless, the buds of the beech on Juniper Down were showing their spring red. And perhaps out of the window of the courtroom, Noyes could see a stray spring lamb nibbling on forbidden grass. Not one of the villagers in the court could have predicted Noyes' destiny. They could hardly have conceived the responsibilities involved. They might not have been surprised later to learn that Noyes was being chosen year after year to every major post in his new town. After all, the Noyes family had built up a distinguished reputation in Weyhill. Only a few years previously, Peter's uncle, William, had run Ramridge Hall, while Robert Noyes, not this one, but another one, an earlier one, had a second uncle, had managed the next largest property in the village, Blissmore Hall. The Noyes family was considered one of the leading families in the parish. But what villager could have foreseen that their neighbor was to be commissioner for the government of Massachusetts, church elder, town selectman, judge of small causes, and town deputy to the Massachusetts legislature? The people of Weyhill, who had seen Peter Noyes serve as a juryman in their manorial court and church wardens of their church on the hill, could have predicted that he would do well as land surveyor, road building director, grantor of timber, and fence viewer. They would have been amazed, however, so would Noyes himself, if someone had told him in 1638 that during the next 20 years he was to attend 129 separate official meetings in his town, to say nothing of the informal church gatherings, church services, and sessions of the Massachusetts legislature. Noyes was destined to be a founder of a New England town, a leader of men in every sense of the word. As such, he was to be responsible for over 650 separate orders, carrying the weight of law and often the power of life and death over his townsmen. For a yeoman from a small West Country village, this was an awesome challenge. Peter Noyes chose his role deliberately. He was not harried out of the land, far from it. He took his steps cautiously but firmly. He had courage and he had vision. He could easily have remained with the Tarrants and the other members of his own family, none of whom favored the activities of Archbishop Laud and his popish ceremonies. Noyes did not rush away impetuously either. Members of another Noyes family, undoubtedly related to Peter, had been deeply involved in the religious controversies of the period and had left 5 years previously in 1633. Since this branch of the family lived only 6 miles from Weyhill in Cloterton, Wiltshire, their activities must have been well known to Peter. The records do not say whether these members of the family had visited Peter Noyes in Weyhill or had passed through the village on their way to the port of embarkation, London. They do state, however, that the families knew one another. The clearest method of comparison is to analyze the major social problems which Noyes argued over, discussed, and finally decided upon in his new town. Many English habits of living, of course, were continued without great modification, but enough disagreements arose in Noyes' new community to demand over 132 town meetings. Does that sound familiar, Bob? How many town meetings did you attend in your lifetime here? You all know Bob Noyes here, the former director of the Public Works. And the formation of about 650 orders during Noyes' lifetime in Sudbury, 1638 to 1657. These town laws, written carefully in the Sudbury Town Book and often signed by the men bearing the responsibility of enforcing the laws, indicate the numerous compromises to which Noyes' townsmen had to agree. Those 650 orders can be classified into the following categories and degrees of importance in terms of frequency of appearance in the town book: land distribution, appointment of town officers, economic regulations, taxes, church affairs, taxes, farming, taxes, personal quarrels, and taxes in the community. I added the taxes. Relations with neighboring towns, relations with Indians, and relations with the Massachusetts government were other problems. Peter Noyes was leaving a tightly knit, strong-spirited community of tenants, farmers, and parishioners, and is not surprising that he helped to reconstruct many of the same relationships in his new town in a wild river valley in New England. One skill which Noyes had to develop almost immediately in New England was that of becoming a strong leader. During his 19 years as one of the chief town officers of Sudbury, Noyes was responsible for 209 appointments, and he participated in 16 town elections. Sounds like John Dubinsky. He's been a selectman for a while. As far as records can reveal, this was a new experience for him, particularly in that the appointments were not made to well-defined posts, but were special authorizations of power to meet distinct, often new social problems. Apparently, Noyes had little specific training to prepare him for the problems of taxation and general economic regulation in his new town. On 53 separate occasions in Sudbury, he had to draw up tax lists, assess land, levy taxes, gather taxes, set salaries, and build up a town treasury. His parish of Weyhill had never dealt with such a volume of economic regulation. The records of Weyhill indicate that the court fines and the land rents were fixed by custom, were not the product of group discussion or arbitrary fiat. Despite the English poor law, little or no money seems to have been expended for relief unless the records pertaining this have been lost. Here, we took care of our poor. When Peter Noyes went out to view the site in 1638, now this is that might be Mount Knobscott, but it isn't. This is a very pretty picture obtained from Google. And this land was, because it had been settled by Indians 10, 12,000 years ago, there was much cleared land here, which greatly aided the boat people, as I call them, Peter Noyes and company, to come and settle here because they could quickly grow a crop. But when he came out here, however much he might have feared both the wilderness and the heathen, he must have been excited about the possibilities. Just about 7 miles west of the far border of Watertown, the trail suddenly dipped down as it left the large groves of oak and chestnut and turned to the southwest. A secondary trail continued into the valley westward, only to disappear in a great broad plain of meadow grass, free from trees, growing as high as a man's waist and in some places as high as his shoulders. This meadow grass was one of the leading attributes of early Sudbury because it was very rich and nutritious. There was only one small place that it still is growing on an island in the Sudbury River. Otherwise, it's been totally exterminated by the growth of other weeds that have taken over that place. But the men from Weyhill had probably never seen such meadows. Their extent, about 3,000 acres, was twice the size of the whole Weyhill parish and vastly greater and more luxuriant than the small amount of meadow which bordered the little stream, the Anton, which ran through Panton Grafton. The river which flowed through this wilderness was full of salmon, alewives, shad, pickerel, and other fish. Beaver were plentiful, and the country seemed well stocked with game such as grouse, wild fowl, turkeys, bear, and deer. With several brooks rising from springs and with the sparkling Musquitiquid River, the site was ideal for pasture and for hay ground. Another factor was important. While there were many Indian settlements and camping places in the valley to the north and south at the falls and by various ponds, there were no major encampments in the immediate area and only 1 or 2 Indians living on nearby hills. The main Indian trail going eastward had few fordings, no large hills to cross, and ran almost directly to the bay towns over gently rolling woodlands. It assured communications both with towns on the east coast and with the settlements to the southwest, and within 10 years it became the highway to Watertown, particularly for the annual cattle drives in the fall to coastal meadows. This chapter was headed, "All Liberties as Other Towns Have." When Peter Noyes and his fellow petitioners, I'm sorry we don't have a picture of Peter Noyes. I think there's one out there. I heard a rumor many years ago there was one in England. We're still looking for it. But otherwise, take a picture of Bob, and it's probably what he looked like. When Peter Noyes and his fellow petitioners were granted all liberties as other towns have by the General Court in 1638, the Bay government was referring to the 17 other Massachusetts towns which had already been established. But neither Noyes nor his leading citizens had lived in any New England town except Watertown, and they had never been elected or appointed to a governing council. They brought with them years of experience in English communities, and it is only natural that they relied on this training in addition to whatever reports they heard about Boston, Salem, Charlestown, Cambridge, and other early Bay settlements. To Noyes, the phrase, "liberties of a town," undoubtedly stimulated memories of the power and government of the borough of Andover, Hants, where his relatives served as members of the borough councils, since Andover is adjacent to Weyhill and was the market town. Noyes knew it well. And as the Chuck. To go to sleep? All I hit was advance. As the town grew and the separation became more elaborate, just be a moment while it... They cut the mighty oaks and pine trees and built stout houses in originally what is now Wayland, and otherwise later after 1642 in this side of the river. Well, anything he did?
Got me. Let me try something else.
I don't see any light.
Can anyone see green and red lights on the bottom of the projector?
Green and red. Green and red.
I didn't disturb anything. Well, you can just imagine. There's a pretty picture up there, and Amy.
Something's happening.
Amy. Your turn.
Really?
Yep.
Okay.
May have to talk into.
Do something until it works. Go ahead, Rick.
Well, I just go back to Okay. Sorry, I'm just putting on something to talk over.
All right. Hi, everybody. I hope you can hear me. Thanks for coming today. Okay. I'm sorry I didn't have enough handouts. You'll have to share with each other. Next time I'll bring more. My name is Amy Bowker-Noyes. I grew up on Peakham Road in Sudbury, and I was named after my great-grandmother, Amy Bowker-Noyes, who was a Bowker who lived in North Sudbury and married my great-grandfather, Fred, who lived in South Sudbury. So I have pictures of her over here that you can look at after. I'm married to Carl Lagia, and I have a 2.5-year-old daughter. And I work in Boston in the financial industry for Congress Asset Management. It's in the Seaport area. My office overlooks the old Jimmy's Harbor side, which now looks completely different. It's a conservative, pretty conservative office. Let's see. Today, here with me is my father, Robert, or Bob Noyes. I'm sure many of you, if you lived here for a while, would know him. He grew up here on Concord Road, but spent a lot of time with his grandparents on Peakham Road. My dad first worked in the engineering department in Sudbury, and then was public works director for, 30 years? 35 years. And it was a position that had a 1-year term when he started, which, if you're the head of household, that's pretty brave, that your job's on the line every year. Luckily nobody ran against him every year, but I remember we spent a lot of time campaigning as kids, doing a lot of that. Also here from our family is my sister Heather Noyes Daniak and her husband Chris, and their 2 kids, Nicholas and William. Let's see. So first, my mother is here also, Dorothy Noyes. My parents have been married for almost almost 50 years, and they have 3 kids. My brother Dan, who lives in Vermont, myself, and my sister. Sorry. I'll get it for that later. It is in my notes. So first I wanted to go over the Noyes coat of arms, and then second I'll talk more about the origins of the name Noyes, which I had no idea the origins are from France, which was new for me. And third, I was going to talk more in depth about the 2 Noyes families that came from England, Peter Noyes and also the Reverend James Noyes. So I guess let's get started. So this is the Noyes coat of arms that I found in the history book. And on the top is a dove with an olive branch in his mouth, and he's standing on what is actually a walnut. And so this is the cross with the coat of arms, which most coat of arms, the cross goes the other way, from upper right to lower left, and ours goes the other way. So I don't know if we were lefties, or because I'm a lefty, maybe that's why it went that way, but I guess most coat of arms, the cross goes the other way, but maybe someone here knows the answer to that. So the name Noyes means a dweller at or near a walnut tree, and the origins of the name is originally French. There's quite a lot of opinions as to the origins of the family name, but one opinion is that the crest of the coat of arms, specifically the dove with the olive branch in his mouth, gives color to the fact that the family comes from the ark. The words Noah and Noyes mean the same thing, saved from drowning. And from the fact that there were, I guess, men near a bridge over the Seine in Paris whose job was to save drowning people. And their sign, or what we would use today as a business card indicating their line of work, is the name Noyes. So I think of it as maybe a lifeguard, or, instead of on your business card it would say lawyer or carpenter, I guess it would say Jane Doe Noyes, because they were lifeguards, or they would save people, something like that, I guess. It's the first I learned about that. The name is thought to be, I guess originally it was Delanoye, Delanoye, or from the drowned, i.e. the ark, and the name Noah. The first place that Noyes is mentioned is Normandy, in a town called Noyen-sur-Andel, and this town is called Charleville now. I guess there were 3 Noyes brothers who moved into England during this time of conquest. They moved to towns named Wilts, Hants, and Cornwall, and although they spelled their names Delanoye, D-A-L-A-N-O-Y-E, it slowly evolved into N-O-I-S-E, and then N-O-Y-S-E, and then here in the U.S., N-O-Y-E-S. So, kind of interesting. So from here, there were 2 Noyes, as I said, that crossed the pond around the same time. Peter Noyes was one Noyes, and the Reverend James Noyes was the other. So I'll talk about Peter Noyes first, and I know Lee talked quite a bit about this, but this is the data I brought on Peter Noyes. On April 24, 1638, a ship from London arrived in Boston Harbor, and among its 40 passengers was a family who had a dream of starting a new life. The family included Peter Noyes, who was 47 years old, that would be my daughter, Peter Noyes, 47 years old, his daughter Elizabeth, and their son Thomas. They started in Watertown and then moved to Sudbury, where their dream came true. After 1 year in America, Peter and his son decided that they would go back to England and bring back other people in their family. So, on August 12, 1639, they returned to Weyhill, England, and that same year they came back to America on the ship the Jonathan and resettled in Sudbury, where they grew up. when Peter returned from England, he brought his 3 servants. When Peter returned from England, he brought his 3 servants, as was the custom of the times. Peter had 2 slaves. One was named Peter Boza, and the other one, her name was Flora. And although not much is said about his servants and slaves, we know that he had them. The town of Sudbury started to take shape near Wayland Center. So if you look in your handout, and you go to page 4, you'll actually see a plaque that I think is behind the Hosmer House, this on the Confidence. So that's from that. And then this is a sign that if you drive down Route 27 and you slow down, you'll see this old rusty sign. And it says that this is the first meeting house was built here in Wayland, because everybody already knows Wayland and Sudbury were together back then. So if you stand in the cemetery on Route 27, Old Sudbury Road, that's the center of the first Sudbury settlement, where the first meeting house was built. So Peter Noyes' first land, I guess, was down in that area, and it abutted the Goodnows, and everybody knows the Goodnows of the namesake of the Goodnow Library in town. And so I guess they were neighbors, which is interesting. And also in my handout, if you turn a couple towards the end, there's a picture of a bridge. There was a lot of writing that we started in Wayland, and it was difficult to progress over the Sudbury River because it floods out, as we saw this year. It flooded Russell's Garden Center, and just, it was a mess. Wasn't the road closed in Sudbury? Yeah. So when there was a ferry service that went from one side of that river to the other that was run by Peter Noyes' son, and I guess he charged 2 pence per passenger. But if you were more than one, or really big, he charged more money. So kind of interesting. And I put a picture of the bridge in that they eventually built, which apparently was very advanced structurally, because it held firm during the flooding. I guess some years the flooding was so bad that the bridge would float downstream and they'd have to start over because it was more of a cart path. But, you know, good for Sudbury. I mean, that's pretty advanced. So once they had this bridge in place, I guess they were able to move over here where we are, so it changed things. And maybe that's when they split up. But so more about Peter. Peter was elected by the Court of Boston to divide up Sudbury, but Lee, I think, went into that. The decision was that every man and every woman would get 6.5 acres each, and every child would get 1.5 acres. And he did this by dividing the land into 2 parts, upland and meadow. Not many people wanted the meadow land, although the people who did needed it for farming. In Peter Noyes' lifetime, he accumulated 352 acres of land in Sudbury. After Sudbury was divided, he and others set up the town's government. Peter himself served as a selectman for 18 years. In this time, he also represented the town of Sudbury in the general court at his own expense. He was a judge of the small claims court where nothing exceeded 40 shillings. He laid out Old Lancaster Road for transportation from the Sudbury River to the town center. And what's funny is the Old Lancaster Road, that's where the Public Works building is, right? So it's the same all these years later. Yeah. The town of Sudbury granted Peter and his son 50 acres of upland and meadow in 1659 to build a mill for the town's use. They built it for the town people to grind corn and saw lumber for housing. The mill burned down in 1699, but once stood where Mill Village stores stand today. I mean, I still go to Mill Village to get my hair cut. I mean, it's kind of funny, all these years later. They're milling, and we're down there getting our hair cut, going out for coffee, right? Going for sushi. It's kind of sad. In 1642, Thomas Noyes, Peter Noyes, oh, I already did that. Peter was one of the people in charge of the ammunition. He had 4 pounds of powder, 33 pounds of shot, and 13 flint, just in case the Indians came. The day before Peter Noyes died in 1657, he named his son Thomas as executor of his estate, leaving him with more than 300 acres in Sudbury, plus land he owned in England. And the only one to carry on the name of Noyes was Peter Noyes Jr., who had 7 children. They were Elizabeth, Mary, Dorothy, Sarah, Esther, Peter, and Joseph. Now, if you turn to the second page of your handout, I had much more data on the other Noyes that I was going to talk about today, the Reverend James Noyes. Now, he came to the United States in 1634, so he came 4 years earlier than Peter Noyes on a ship named the Mary and John. And I guess first they stopped in Mystic, Connecticut, and then they traveled north to Newbury, Mass., where he stayed. The Reverend James Noyes was born in Wiltshire, England. He was educated in Oxford, and he, along with many others, came to the United States because of the English political and religious struggles. I guess Charles I ruled, what they wrote was without Parliament at that time. So those were the years of the Great Migration from 1629 to 1640. Reverend James Noyes lived in Newbury, Mass. On Parker Street until his death, and their family homestead changed, went through a bunch of Noyes living there, but now I'm guessing it's a house owned by their historical society, which would be interesting to go and see. While in the States, Reverend James Noyes had 8 children, 56 grandchildren. He wrote 3 books, which I don't think you'll be able to find on Amazon.com. He wrote the Catechisms for Children, Temple Measured, and Moses and Aaron. And they say he was a great singer, which is probably where I got that from. I'm kidding. It's going to break into song. No, I'm kidding. So it follows along my handout on page 2. So after Reverend James was his son, the deacon Joseph Noyes, and he was born in Newbury. And so then if you fast forward to 1663, this was the date of birth of our first relative in Sudbury, Mass. His name was Joseph Noyes. He was married to Ruth Haynes. Haynes, everybody here knows Haynes School, Haynes Road, the Haynes family. Joseph Noyes was selectman for 28 years, a constable, justice of the peace. The history books say that he was a man of considerable wealth. He had also a bunch of slaves, and apparently he died in Bermuda in 1717. His son was born in 1700, Peter Noyes, the other Peter Noyes, and he lived 72 years. Peter Noyes' son was named Oliver Noyes, and he married a woman named Mercy Johnson, and then the history book said he married a woman named Rachel Johnson, so I don't know if they were sisters, or I'm guessing he wasn't married to the 2 women at one time, because we're not in Utah. Oliver was a lieutenant in the Revolutionary War, and he marched at the alarm in Concord under Isaac Locker for 3 days in 1775. So that's really interesting. His son is named Asa, and he was the longest living relative of ours, 83 years of that time. He died in 1852, and he married Elizabeth Pratt. Everybody here knows Pratt Mill Road, right? Right? And then something must have happened to her, I'm guessing, because then he remarried a woman named Zeruiah Fish, and he had 8 kids. Next in line was Isaac Noyes, and he died in 1869, so we're getting closer to now. He married a woman named Experience Hayden. Experience, I mean, it was a name we were considering for our daughter, right? Along with silence, patience, and go to bed, right? After Isaac was Joseph Noyes, and he died in 1896. He lived 72 years and was married to Nancy Austin. I don't know if that's related to Austin Road, but he had 4 kids. And then came Hobart Noyes, and this is the relative. We're really close now, because my dad, he remembers Hobart Noyes, this man only lived 57 years, and my dad mentioned that he thought he had a farming accident, fell in a sand pit, which is terrible. He had 4 kids. 2 of his kids died before the age of 4, which is interesting. And when I was little, like I said, I grew up on Pekin Road, and it was this old farm that had been in our family forever, and it was just packed full of just stuff. And I just remember as a kid, my family would just have to clean out sections, and we found one year, my brother and I found this full-size hay wagon, and on the side of it, it said Hobart, Noyes. It was like as big as a Little House on the Prairie hay wagon, where there was one seat on the front with a big hinge, and then the back, it was like a flatbed where they'd put all their hay. But so it obviously was Hobart's wagon, which is kind of interesting. It's now resides at Russell's Garden Center, if you'd all like to see it. So next in line is my great-grandfather, Fred Noyes, who I have a picture of, and he was married to my namesake, Amy Bowker Noyes. He lived on Pekin Road. He was a dairy farmer and a mailman, and he was the first mailman also in town. He was born in 1872. They had 2 kids, Alvin and Ruth, so Alvin is my dad's father. Fred was the first mailman in Sudbury. He first delivered mail on horse, and then he bought a Harley Davidson from downtown when those were invented. And we found the bill of sale one year. And what's funny is, I'm not sure if I think my brother has it somewhere, but it says on it, a note handwritten to my great-grandfather, something along the lines of, please keep in touch and let us know if it's faster to deliver mail using the Harley versus the horseback. It was pretty funny. So my dad has a picture of it, and I think he remembers it, and he's going to be right around here to talk further about all his history. He knows a lot about all of this stuff. And he brought a book on the renovation, shows pictures of the mail truck in Sudbury being renovated. And the mail truck, the Sudbury mail truck, now lives in Vermont with my brother. It's usable. He takes it to car shows, the Stowe Car Show. So if you come to the Stowe Car Show in Vermont, you'll see all our cars because we drive them over. So my dad's father is Alvin Noyes, and his picture is here. He was the public works director in Sudbury probably for his whole career, right, Dad? Yep. He worked for the highway department? Yeah. And my family lived on Pekin Road, like I said. It was a dairy farm. We owned over 100 acres up until the mid-'80s, and we don't anymore, but life goes on, right? So in conclusion, the Noyeses have served Sudbury for hundreds of years in ways such as selectman, superintendent of schools, superintendent of streets, and mailman. They have been on thousands of committees. They've helped mold this town into one of the most elite towns in the Commonwealth. So, does anybody have any questions?
Maybe it's overheating.
I wanted to let you know what I brought with me. I brought a bunch of old pictures, but I also brought my Amy Bowker Noyes' autograph book, which is kind of funny because the dates in there are from like 1880. So her classmates wrote things and would sign their name and write the date. I mean, that's pretty old. And then calling cards. I mean, I'm sure you all know that's before. And then some dance cards from an old dance that my great aunt went to. It's kind of funny because all the dances are listed, and then all the boys that she danced with were listed too. Only a few were my uncle.
Can someone tell us about the quilts that you...
We will. Yes, thank you. We'll do questions and answers at the end. Let's see, Paul, we have another piece here from the town meeting tonight. Can you go in the back?
Thanks to Amy for all the wonderful history of the Noyes family. You know, Peter Noyes, coming over from England, where you were what you were born to be, and what people like him brought over with him was a whole new way of thinking about life and liberty and opportunity, and it had nothing to do with your birthright ties. But basically, everyone had the opportunity and the responsibility to do their part to make the community thrive. And so this song, written by Kenny Getz, is a real beauty because I think it captures that. So sing along with me, huh? Ready? Each and every one among us has a job to do. Everyone fulfills a role and keeps this town running true. Every year rotate the postings, each man gets a turn to work a job, and in the process, with each pursuit, there's much to learn. In this wonderful new country, we have duties with no birthright ties. Each and every one of us helps to keep this town alive. So if you don't like what you're doing, no need to complain. Next year there are new jobs waiting. Next one won't be such a strain. In this wonderful new country, we have duties with no birthright ties. Each and every one among us helps to keep this town alive. Each and every one among us has a job to do. Every person is important, men and women, children too. So each of us will do our duty, a whole more than the parts. With the will we enter freely, joining heads and hands and hearts. With song will we enter freely, joining hands and hearts.
Amy spoke about Noyes' Mill, and there is the picture of the sawmill. And down here in front, to your right, is a model made by Sumner Chilton Powell of South Sudbury as of 1695. So this shows the west side of the Noyes Mill. On the left is sawmill, and then grist mill to the right. And over here, if you don't know where you are, and this is Noyes Mill, and this is the mill pond, and this is Route 20, this is Dunkin' Donuts. So now you know where you are, because that's Concord Road and Route 20, as I say. All this is filled in. This is parking space for the present mill village. Not one of these buildings exists. And she spoke about the rope ferry, and oddly enough, the Minuteman Militia chose to build a rope ferry, a ferry pulled by rope by hand. What year was that, Tony? 1999. Dr. Howes, the former colonel of the Minuteman Militia, built it. He says he still has it, and it took some strength to pull it across. It sadly was not used in a campaign to get to Concord, correct? It wasn't used, right? No. And you still have it. And I can testify, I'm right there on the left, that I was there. And now we have this unusual little piece. No. No. Enter. No. Well, this is in upstate New York, and it's off of YouTube, and I guess we can't make it work. No. And then it went to sleep. Oh boy. Technology, it's great. Everything is off now. It doesn't want to run. Well, this is 1 minute and 23 seconds. If we were able to make it play, you can go to YouTube and go to Rope Ferry, Camp Todd, and see it. It's a man who's attached the camera to his body, so you catch his breathing as he's trying to pull this thing across. So it was funny. And now we have something to listen to from, I don't think, Bob, you've never heard your father in 1975, have you? Okay. Let's see how technology is for this one.
When were you born?
Oh, I was born June 5th, 1902. And I was actually born here in Sudbury on a house that still stands on Pekin Road in the old Noyes homestead. I think I was the 4th generation that was there. And my sister still lives there. And my son is on the property, and he built a house on the property, so he's the 5th generation there. So we've been around there a while. But, of course, the time I was born, this old Doc Oviatt had his headquarters now where Kathy Stuber is. He used to go out with a horse and buggy and take care of the births. And the strange part of it is, as I think of it though, how the cycle of life goes. He brought me into the world, and I helped put him in the cemetery. I wasn't superintendent at the time, but I was helping my uncle at the time, so this is the way the cycle of life goes. And here's a man who brought me in, and I put him back in the cemetery. But reading over an old town report on when he was going out for some of the pauper cases, he got as much as $2 for attending a birth. It was a pretty expensive doctor. So it's quite something when you stop and think of it.
Did you go to school in Sudbury?
Oh yes, graduated from Sudbury High in 1920, and I was with the largest class up to that time. We had 12 in it, 6 boys and 6 girls. And when I guess it was Bentley asked me what we did for sports. What do you do with sports with 6 boys and 6 girls? I mean, you don't have enough for a team. And there was 2 of the boys that cared nothing about sports, so we ended up, well, part of the time anyway, playing bid whist or something rather than out exercising when we probably should have. We did play baseball some, but it wasn't enough of a group to really have much of an athletic program.
Whereabouts was the school located?
Right where it is now, where the white building is. I graduated from that building. I went to school, started school down near where the police station is now, and I went there for 5 years. And then we moved uptown and went what we called the intermediate room, and then on up through the grammar. And when I was going, there was 9 grades and 4 years of high, so it was 13 years. I think they've eliminated that now, so you go, isn't it 12 years now? They dropped the 9th grade, but at that time we had it. So.
Do any of your school friends now live in Sudbury?
Very few. Unfortunately, several of our classmates, when I was acting superintendent of synagogue, I had to put them in the cemeteries. I mean, this is kind of a sad situation. The worst part of the job is, let's see, 1, 2, 3 out of my class was buried while I was acting as a superintendent. So there aren't too many left here in town that I went to school with. They either drifted away or died, passed away. Must be I've lived too long, I'll lose them.
What did you do, like, during the summer?
Well, I was born and brought up on a farm. We had a 160-acre farm there, a dairy farm. And when you were living on a dairy farm with 20, 25 head of cattle and 5 horses, there was never any question what you did in the summer. There was always plenty to do, and this was 7 days a week. There was no vacation period, no holidays. It was every day. Those animals needed attention. You needed getting something together to feed them or something of that kind. It was always exercise, believe me. One of the jobs my sister and I both used to try to duck was we raised a lot of ensilage corn. That's what you put in the cider, to feed the cows in the winter. So we were always getting a call to ride horseback. We didn't appreciate riding horseback because they were big work horses. And being little kids, I think this is why I'm still kind of bow-legged from riding those big horses. We used to try to dodge it, but it was so much easier to cultivate the corn with somebody guiding the horse, Otherwise, they used to put the reins around the back of the head and try to work and, on the cultivator as well as on the reins. So they loved to get somebody to take care of the horsepower for them, as much as we didn't like them. But that went on, seemed most of the summer. Either that or gathering hay or some damn thing, If you live on a farm, you never wonder what you're going to do in the summertime, believe me.
And I have just one little other note in relation to the rope ferry, because it's a very dramatic little piece. And you saw the picture of the rope ferry, so this is about a young man here in Sudbury in 1642. The rope was cold between the young man's hands. He actually had a choice of 2 ropes in which to pull that ran parallel across the river and tightly secured to trees on each shore. The ropes ran through the curved open iron rods atop the 4-post, 2 posts on each side and about waist high. His ferry was big enough for him and a few passengers with their supplies and perhaps a beast. The sturdy young man was elected to deliver into the wilderness the new settlers and their wares. It was at this spot on the Sudbury River and with this young man that Western expansion truly began. The year was 1642, and the man was Thomas Noyes. Thank you very much. And I want to present a copy of Puritan Village to Amy, and next year we'll bring you back and you can recite it, yes. So thank you very much, and now we'll have questions and answers, unless you want to applaud again. So we have any questions? Yes.
I was talking with, does this work?
It's on. It's on.
Can you hear me?
We'll swallow it. It's on.
Okay, I was talking with John Wilson, who wasn't able to be here today. He lives on Horse Pond Road. And he said he can remember when he moved here in 1946 that he thinks it was Alvin who would come bring the cows. There were about a dozen cows, and they'd come across Pekin and come over to Horse Pond and graze in the fields on both sides of Horse Pond, about where Noyes Road is now. Of course, it wasn't Noyes Road then. He'd see it happen every day. He was about 16 at the time. That was a good memory for him.
Yes, Lee.
This is a question for Bobby. Which house on on Pekin were you raised in? The small white one or the large white one?
Actually, I grew up on Concord Road.
Oh.
Can you say it again, please?
I actually grew up on Concord Road by Wadsworth Cemetery, right across from Wadsworth Cemetery. It was an old underground railroad station during the Revolutionary War. And we used to have a back cellar in that, and they used to bring the slaves in, hide them in the cellar, and then at night they'd bring a wagon around the back and lay them down, two of them flat and then cover them with hay, and then they'd go from there up Concord Road to I think Emmons's house near the center, and then we'd go up to Alby's house further, and eventually all the way to Canada. But no, I spent a lot of time on Peakham Road at the farm.
What is considered to be the farm?
The farm is
White one or the large?
with the
white
barn,
one,
the barn
346, I think it is.
333, which is the barn and the farmhouse. No, it's still there. Everything's there.
Well, part of the barn. Part of it.
Well, part of it fell down, but they're reconstructing the part of it right now. And that's basically, I spent more time there than I did in Concord Road. And I was probably herding those cows down across Peakham to Horse Pond Road, because I remember going down. That was our pasture on both sides of Horse Pond Road. There used to be a gravel pit behind off of Horse Pond Road too. And when the two brothers, my grandfather and his brother, owned the whole farm together, and when the brother passed away, the farm got divided in two, and our side of the family kept the side of Peakham Road, and Howland Noyes, his brother, his family kept the other side. And they decided that they were going to sell the pit off, and his wife decided to sell the pit off. It's too bad, because she sold it outright rather than sitting there and counting the loads of gravel going out of there. She could have retired a millionaire, really.
Where is that? I don't know.
That was, no, that was on Horse Pond, behind Horse Pond Road. There's a subdivision there now. Tall Pines, yeah, it's actually to the east of Tall Pines is where the gravel, and it abutted Cavicchio's Piggery and all that. But,
Thank you.
You didn't answer my question about 340s. I think it's
333 Peakham Road.
Up the street a little ways is a large white house. About from Mark Tree, it's like two houses up.
back towards Horse Pond Road,
No, the other way. The Pratts used to live there. The Hickeys lived there for
Right.
25
Right,
years.
right. They just tore it down and built a big house there.
Yeah.
Right. Well, that was Holland's house. That was my grandfather's brother's house, and that was part of the farm also. See, they each had 5 acres of land. My grandfather and Holland had 5 acres of land, and then the rest of the property was actually held jointly. And so when Holland passed away first, that's when the land got divided. But they both kept their 5 acres, which the 5 acres that my side of the family had is where the barn was, and the farmhouse is located today.
Do you know anything about Apple Way that connected Peakham to Horse Pond? The
Yes.
so-called cart path?
Yeah, there was a cart path that went from Peakham to Horse Pond Road, and George Wilson owned one side of the cart path, and our family owned the other half. And it was like the hill, the McCoys and they fought constantly over that cart path, because my grandfather used to have to deliver milk to Pratt's, Sarah Pratt's, on way up by the end of Pratt Mill Road and Horse Pond Road. And George Wilson would go out and cut a tree down and block the path so that you couldn't go through. And this went on for years and years, and they fought constantly over that cart path. It was just a cart path. It was just two wheel ruts, and yeah, the family was always laughing about that. The ironic thing was that after George Wilson's wife died, George came over and had baked a cake, or a pie, I guess it was, and gave it to my grandmother. And this was quite a few years ago.
someone who was here, somebody who lives here near the right on Concord Road, closer up here, who said it was a Noyes house. Do you know which Noyes lived there? Near the Penny Meadow sign?
Well, at one time, yeah. At one time, where Dr. Bouts lived on Concord Road, my aunt and uncle lived, their name was Talent, they lived on the opposite side. I believe that's where my grandfather, Fred, lived there for a while, from what I understand, and then they moved up to the farm on Peakham Road. So that's quite an old house, too. But I don't know all the particulars on that.
Any other questions? Yes, Miss Ursula.
Well, I still would like to know, and maybe other people would too, about the quilts.
I was just going to talk about that.
Well, you gave me that the last time.
Okay.
You didn't say it.
We have 4 quilts that the Noyes family gave us this year, and you'll have to walk around carefully to view the other side when we turn the lights on. But they've gone to the Lowell Quilt Museum and the Massachusetts Quilt Documentation Project, and they have been documented. But we're going to ask Bobby Noyes' wife or Bobby to add anything else that is here, so we can capture that now. But, I can't exactly show off the chair. The chair is... Can somebody help me bring up the chair, please?
Where do you want it, lady?
It's heavy, very heavy.
Ooh, it's heavy.
Thank you. This is a pilgrim chair, and it was given to Henry Ford when he mistakenly, when interviewed, said that he wanted to build a pilgrim village here in Sudbury. He was faulted for that, and he said, oh, Puritan. But he was given that. My father bought it in 1948. It was found in the carding mill. There's no date on it, but it's a pilgrim chair. And try to lift that all the time, yes. So, and Peter Noyes could have sat there, who knows? And it could have belonged to him. Any other questions? Yes.
Hi, I'm Brooke Meechin Meggs from over on Marlborough Road. I live on the Meechin Farm there at
A poor farm.
next to the Poor Farm, or formerly the Poor Farm. We did a presentation here a couple of years ago. I just on the Noyes front, I just wanted to say that the town originally acquired the land for the Poor Farm in 1834 from Asa Noyes. I think he was in his 50s then. I know he did live another 30 years or so after he sold the farm, but we have the official town record of the sale from Asa Noyes to the town. So if you want to add this to your Noyes family archives.
Can he buy it back?
Yeah. Oh, by the way, it was $4,700 for the entire thing, all in with all the pitchforks and everything included. But I was wondering if you know if that Noyes land was part of the original distribution in 1638 or whatever, when the Noyes family had acquired that section of.
Well, we could bring down a map that Chuck Zimmer, our wonderful technology man, has created from Sumner Chilton Powell's maps, and we could look it up, but it's real fine print. You have to have very good eyes or a magnifying glass, and we're hopefully we'll be digitizing that in some way someday. Any other questions? So, yes, Betty.
Bob related a story to me. I went over to ask for his autograph because I have the Sumner Chilton Powell's book, and I thought it would be interesting to have the latest living representative, I guess, of the Noyes family, I'm not sure, sign it. And I told him I was Betty Bishop and that I had lived down in the Raymond farm on Raymond Road for 32 years before we moved up here. He said, oh yes, that reminds me of a story that one of his kinsmen
was a mailman who ran one of the first mail trucks delivering mail in Sudbury, except that when he got down to Raymond Road, it was usually too boggy and muddy and wet, and he couldn't get his car through. So, true to the saying, the U.S. mail gets through, the man would go up into town and harness a horse to come back down and give the mail to Mrs. Raymond, who lived in the Raymond house at that time, then go take his horse back and come back and get his car and go on with the rest of his route. So I thought that was very noble.
Thank you, Betty. Well, that actually is covered with his father's interview. He talks about that, but I know that's the problem with the tape. So any other questions? So thank you very much.
We hear from the Noyes family about the quilts.
The quilts.
Who made them?
Yeah.
I'll talk about it. So these quilts, according to my father, were made by Amy Bowker Noyes. I guess she sewed them. And did she sew them by herself, or did you want to say, like, did she sew all day, or what was her?
Feel like finishing up with another song?
Can you give a little glimpse into the day in the life of? Did she?
Okay.
She didn't go out and do the farming stuff, right? She just did sewing.
Neglected. No. Okay.
Just give them a little few words. Come on.
All I know is they were done by my grandmother, and like Amy said, no, she didn't do any participate in the farming aspect, so she must have spent a lot of time sewing. But I don't recall her any time I was up there doing making quilts. But I know. Yeah, right. They were stored. They were stored. And all the trunks and all the stuff that we've acquired once the farmhouse was taken over by our side of the family.
Okay. One more word.
I was just going to say one more thing. My family has a Noyes Bible that goes way, way back, and I'm sorry we couldn't bring it today. My brother has it in Vermont, and he didn't come down for this. Shame on him. But it's really neat. It has this old writing, but it goes way, way back, and each generation would handwrite in their family members and everything. But one thing that we noticed was that there are a lot of young people who passed away, young meaning children under 4, not infants like sudden infant death, but kids under 4. And one thing that we've learned with the Noyes family is that we're a carrier of this gene, a recessive gene that is, I guess, has been with us, I'm guessing, from England. And as people now, with technology, they're having their genes mapped and their DNA done. Well, we've been working on ours because I have a nephew that has a gene that's, when it's matched up with another recessive gene, brings forth this disease named Batten's disease. And I'm a carrier. Must come with, and it's a Noyes thing. But also my brother-in-law's family is a carrier too. So if you want to hear more about Batten's disease, and we do have a foundation, our Promise to Nicholas Foundation. My brother-in-law is here and is the head of this foundation, and they're researching to find a cure. We're making progress. If you want to hear more about it, or if Chris wants to say a few short words about it, Chris is right here. Chris also grew up in Sudbury.
Yeah, I'm Chris Daniak. I grew up in Sudbury. Actually, I'm Brimstone Lane, and you guys know where Ford's Folly is? Yeah, we would walk there every day with the dogs. And the school bus ride took us around the Wayside Inn, the grist mill, and that's how I grew up. And there was a really cute girl I met. Married her years later, obviously. But yeah, I married Heather about 11 years ago, and my family's history is more from Russia, and my grandmother's maiden name was Rayleigh, which is we know there's an English component. So with the English Noyes and the English Rayleighs, there's this gene that has been passed along. The interesting thing about inherited diseases, I think everybody in this room probably has a family member somewhere along the line that has an inherited disease that's caused a problem. It turns out that each one of us carries about 3 different inherited genes that can cause terrible diseases. It's just hooking up with those people and getting those 3 correct genes to match that cause the problem. And the interesting thing with Nicholas was our first child. He's 8.5 years old now, and he was born, we thought, completely normal, no issues with him, but then developed some seizures when he turned 4, and started to have issues going forth from that, including problems with his vision and problems with his movement. And we had a long time to diagnose this, over 1.5 years. Turns out it's one of the rarest diseases, this Batten disease. About 300 or 400 kids in the United States have it at any one time. And it's not a lot known about it. So as we've gone along, we've created a foundation called our Promise to Nicholas Foundation to try to find out more about the disease and hopefully cure it. Unfortunately, it is a fatal disease. It's a neurodegenerative disease that robs kids of all their abilities over time. So Nicholas has undergone some research, one study where he had a gene correctly implanted into his brain to try to fix the problems that he's had. And there may be some hope for that. But as we move forward, the interesting thing about being here today, we were very honored, obviously, to come down and support the Noyeses and everything. And but I started to think, well, because it's such a rare disease, and you have a very well-documented, prestigious family, there may be much more we can learn about the Noyes family and the heritage, and maybe help document the natural history of this disease in the past and as we go forward, because this is information that's very important to science. So what we were considering is thinking about identifying some people that could work on this as a project and make a grant from our foundation to do that. So maybe you'll hear more from us, from the Our Promise to Nicholas Foundation. Maybe we can have somebody work hand in hand with the Historical Society in Sudbury, and this will be a great way to move forward using the history from the past to help people in the future. So, but thanks for having us today.
Thank you. So thank you very much.